Hello and welcome to this video. Now in this video I'm going to try and show you how I weather diesel engines, and in this episode I'm going to concentrate on this Bachmann warship that belongs to my dad. Now I've already done some prep work. I've put some masking on the windows for the wiper arcs, and the buffer beam detail I could only find a red buffer beam cowl, so I'm going to have to weather this in. Now a hydraulic friend of mine sent me a picture of this actual loco, and here you can see it in that colour scheme, and it is quite dirty under the sole bar. So this is the look I'm going to try and emulate. And like I said, the warships have got a natural tumble home, which provides a good weathering barrier. So we're going to need some paint. So all the paint here is rail match, frame dirt, weather black, brake dust, and some of this Tamiya flat black. Some pipettes, stirring sticks, and some glass jars to mix it in. Now I'm not a professional airbrusher. This is just how I do it. This is my airbrush compressor. Got it off eBay many years ago, still going strong. I do need to change the water trap on it though. And my airbrush is not a branded item. It came with the compressor, and I've been using this for years, and I've done loads of repaints with this. And I hope you'll agree that the end result is worthwhile. So mixing the paint, I get a glass jar and decant some of the frame dirt in first. We're going to start with frame dirt. You don't need very much at all. Just put enough in there to cover the bottom of the jar, and then clean the lid of the jar, because when the lids are shut, when this set stuff dries, it dries like glue, so make sure there's none on the lid. Then using some waterborne thinners, these are all acrylic paints, so waterborne thinner. I drop it into the glass jar with a pipette, and you can see the thinner sits on top of the paint. Now I go for a ratio of about 60-40. 60% paint, 40% thinner at the moment. Then I mix it up with a wooden stirrer. You can see the thinner there sitting on top of the paint. So I stir it up, give it a good stir for a couple of minutes to make sure it's thoroughly mixed. So you see the back of my hand a couple of times during this video. I've never tried to film myself airbrushing before because the camera stand seems to get in the way, but I'll persist with it. But I stir and mix the paint thoroughly, and then before I start painting, when you've mixed the paint, it should be the consistency of milk. That's how I judge it. And before I start painting, what I do is I run a bit of clean thinner through the airbrush to make sure that it's all functioning and it blows away any dust or debris that could be in there. Load some of the paint into the paint cup. Give it a test on my homemade turntable, and the paint is flowing nicely. So it's time to turn my attention to the model. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work along the bottom, just pulling the trigger back ever so slightly so only a small amount of paint comes out. And I'm going to give the bottom a coating, only a thin coat to start with. And if you work under that natural tumble home on a warship, where the carriage washing plants couldn't reach, gives you like a good masking line if you like, if you're careful. So I'll go along the bottom. The wheels, bogies are all done. We'll clean the wheels up afterwards. But I do the bottom there, not forgetting the ends and the insides of the underslung tanks. And just go along like so. You don't have to apply too much paint. Very little at a time. And then I'm going to do the end where I've fitted that buffer beam detail and blend that maroon panel in. The weathering will hide that. Weathering can hide a multitude of sins if you do it properly. And obviously don't forget the tops of the buffers. When you do the buffers, don't forget the tops and the sides. I then did the other side as well. And this is just the initial frame dirt coat I will be adding to this. So I'll go around the model until I'm satisfied that the initial coat has covered everything I want it to. And it is always handy having a couple of models about to do this. So I had this 40, which I replaced the bogies on. The rest of the 40 was weathered. So because I'd got the paint already mixed, I'm just going to touch these in at the same time. It saves wasting paint. So if you are going to weather diesels, always try and do a couple at a time. It just saves on mixing a load more paint and cleaning the airbrush too much. So once I've done the 40, I set that aside to dry, and the next colour I mixed up and used was weathered black. And I cleaned the airbrush this time, cleaned it all out, dried it, and then I apply a weathered black coat to the roof. making sure it goes in all the crevices and on the grills and on the shoulder of the model. This is why I mask the windows, because this will give a nice wiper arc effect, hopefully, when I take that masking off. So I do the shoulder of the model, don't go too far down the body side, because again, in real life the carriage washers couldn't reach a certain point, so I just do the roof and the shoulder just to take that silver shine off. And I also use the weathered black on the bogies and the wheel centres, just very, very sparingly there. Around the fuel fillers on the side, you can just see it there. Around that, there we go. You don't need much of this weathered black, you can obliterate the frame dirt if you're not careful. Then I do the other side shoulder as well, and basically work very gently, small amount of paint, lowish pressure, just to cover what I want it to. Now I want this warship to look like that photograph we saw at the start, a working machine. And again, on the bottom edge there, the wheel centres, wheel hubs, anywhere that grease would accumulate, just give a bit of this weathered black. Now that's probably a bit too heavy on the left hand side there, but we'll sort that out in a minute. So once I'm happy that the weathered black is finished, I also do the grills just to give a quick blast in the side grills. I clean the airbrush again, and now I'm using that Tamiya flat black. That does not need to be thinned. And the only things I'm going to use this for are the exhaust ports. Again, sorry for the back of the hand shot. But I put the flat black from Tamiya across the exhaust ports to where the sooty exhaust would come out. You don't want to use too much of this or go over the top, because this will obliterate anything, because it is a really dark shade of black. And I also use the Tamiya flat black again on the fuel fillers and a little bit on the bogey, just to highlight some detail there. Now it may look like I've obliterated that frame dirt, but you'll see shortly. We'll go back over it. And you can see there on the left just how powerful that Tamiya black really is. So I'm just emphasising where we went on the weathered black, just to touch it in with this flat black. And again in the grills, very, very gently. And it's starting to look good already, and I've been working on this now for about 20 minutes. Now that yellow paint there is brake dust. Looks very, very glarish, but when you apply it to the model gently, it will blend in. It looks brighter on camera than it actually is. It dries a couple of it dries a couple of shades darker than you see on the camera. But I put the brake dust. This is again after cleaning the airbrush again, mixed up some brake dust paint, and I put this around the bogie frames and the wheels, especially around the brake pads. And I will tone this in again, because it looks very yellow at the moment, but you'll see shortly I will tone it in. Now I've done the brake dust, what I do is I put the airbrush into a cleaner and just blast it through till the paint's gone. I'm not cleaning it this time. Now, professional airbrushers will, oh, you should clean it, but this is just the way I do it. I'm not a professional. But I've blasted the airbrush through, and now I've loaded it again with frame dirt, which will mix with the remnants of the brake dust and provide another shade of frame dirt. And I'm just going round now and just toning down those blackened areas and the brake dust areas where we lost a lot of that frame dirt earlier on. So I'm just turning the model, go around the front, around the sides. Now the paint table it's on, this was actually my sister's old makeup drawer, and I bought a Lazy Susan and screwed it to the top, and then put this bit of wood on. And this is what I've used this for years, 20 years. I've used this for, and it just makes it easier to paint. It's and on a like on a turning surface. So now I've toned in that frame dirt again. You can see everything's been toned down a bit. I've worked my way around the model once or twice now, and I'm just checking everything to make sure I'm happy. There's a bit of overspray on the end there, but I'll sort that out in a moment. I'll show you how to correct any mistakes in a minute. And again, blasting the airbrush into the airbrush cleaning pot, I then load it with weathered black again. So this again mixes with the brown and the yellow, and I'm just going to touch in the wheel hubs where the grease would be, because they're always blackened areas. Where the weathered black, I'd gone over the top a little bit with the frame dirt. So again, just touching this in. And I hope you'll agree it's starting to look really nice. And like I said, this is 25 minutes work now, mixing the paint. Now I've edited the video down, obviously. So it just goes to show what you can achieve. So I'm just spraying in the wheel centres, and it looks a world away from that shiny plastic model we started with. Now on that end where I put the buffer beam, there was a bit of an overspray with the weathered black that I wasn't happy. It went onto the yellow end a bit more than I wanted it to. And because this is acrylic paint, even though it's dried, a cotton bud dipped in that waterborne thinner, and I'm able to clean those head code glasses and also the yellow panel. Now the effect I went for here, I don't want to remove all the weathering. I just want it to look like it's been washed naturally with rain or somebody with a cloth. It's cleaned around the lights and cleaned the lenses of the head codes. And if you use a downward motion like this, it simulates where the rain and water runs down and washes it into all the crevices. So I'm just cleaning the front end, if you like, but leaving the dirt all around and in those panel lines. And that looks, immediately, that looks so much better in my eyes. So I'm just going to just use that cotton bud there. Whoops, get rid of that bit of fluff. And yeah, already that's looking so much better. So that again was set aside to dry. That's the good thing about this acrylic paint. It dries really, really fast. And then I'm going to pull the masking off the windows because I think we're about done with the airbrush on the Warship. And just flicking that up with the scalpel. I should have used my tweezers, but I left them in the workshop. And that leaves a wiper out. Now it's hardly discernible on the camera, but it is there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is a thing I've learned from my friend Nigel, who does a lot of modelling, and that's just to do some panel washes. Now this is that Tamiya flat black. This is thinned right down 80-20 water and paint. This is, and it just put a blob on there, and capillary action pulls the paint into the panel lines just to highlight them, and then it dries matte, and it looks it's quite a good effect. Now I do all the panel lines on the side of the body and the grills. Now I thought that was going to run in when I did that bit, but it didn't. I'm going to have to tease that in with the brush. You can see how thin the paint is, look. And then the paint just sits in all the grills. Just highlights them a bit, makes them look nice and weathered. Yeah, it really does flow nicely. And again on the other side, once that was dry, I did the other side, the pin panel wash, and then also around the fueling point and all around the door hinges there. So it is starting to look nice now, and we are getting towards the end of the process. So then when that's dry, I put the model back up and I get a cotton bud, dip it in the Tamiya flat black, and just push it onto the buffers to simulate the grease marks that the Warship would have had from buffering up to stock. These obviously don't have to be symmetrical because they wouldn't be in real life, but make sure you do all 4 buffers, even the coupling end. And then that will dry a matte finish. And just dab it on there. If you dab it with a cotton bud, I find sometimes it can leave like a greasy texture. And it looks quite good in my opinion anyway. Now one other thing I am going to do now that that's done, and again leave it to dry for 10 minutes, I'm going to get some chrome silver paint. This is Tamiya again. And then dipping a number 1 brush into it and then virtually drying it off, I'm going to paint the door handle silver because this would have been obviously highly used, and then the steps. Just on the edge of the steps where drivers walking up and down into the cab would have worn the dirt away to bare metal. Just touch it there, and I think that looks a really good effect. And then again on the other end and on the other side, the steps and doors were done. Now this is virtually dry, this brush, there's very little paint on there. And it's just a little effect, and I think it looks quite good. And then the only other thing I did was again with a cotton bud, some of that waterborne thinner. I'm just going to clean the side windows on the driver's side. Now I'm not cleaning these solely, I'm just literally wiping the paint off the centres and leaving the muck in the outside areas and in the crevices. So it looks like the windows have been given a wipe with a rag when the driver's been in the cabs. And that is it. That is the Warship done. Now, some people do coat their models with matte varnish. I tend not to, although I have done it in the past, but that involves again masking all the windows up. But I'm not going to do it with this one. And there it is, the finished product basking in the sun in the garden. Now I'll leave you to your opinions on what it looks like compared to this picture of the real one. But I think we've done a pretty good job. And again, that end there where I cleaned the paint off looks nice. Now it's all dry. So the Western was tested before giving it to my dad. This was my dad's model. I got it for his birthday this year for him. And he wanted it weathered, so I've weathered it and detailed at one end. To clean the wheels, you've seen me do that on Trash to Track. In this case, because it was paint, I used a cotton bud and some of the WD-40 contact cleaner. Clean the wheels and the wheel backs and the pickups, and the Warship's now back in service, hauling a train with the odd maroon coach in it as it was in the early 70s around the garden. So thanks so much for watching. I welcome your comments. Like I say, I'm not a professional. This is just how I do it. That's just how I'm not saying this is the correct way. This is just the way I weather my diesels up. So thanks so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.